My name is Mike Weichert. I've been involved with disaster management for about 15 years now. I actually started doing this working in Khartoum, Sudan, working with people who were displaced by the war there. I've worked in other places such as Latin America. I worked in Haiti leading the response to the cholera outbreak that happened fairly recently. Right now I'm involved in our strategic planning around disasters, so it's a case of making sure that we have our strategies right and are doing the right thing when new disasters come up. Before a disaster even happens, we're trying to figure out what types of threats people might be under from natural disasters. So when we can, we do work before disasters happen to prepare communities so they can adapt to disasters happening. They can hopefully reduce their impact. When a disaster happens, obviously the first thing we're trying to do is get in there, try to help those people that are affected, give them the types of support they need. This may include they may need water, they may need food, they may need health care, they may need shelter, things like that. And then once the situation is stabilized, we look at helping people get back on their own feet where they can look after themselves more. So that means more indirect support, not so much giving them things, but actually giving them training, giving them skills and capacities and opportunities to get back on their own feet and earn their own livelihood, build their own homes, things like that. There are a few things. Obviously, children are usually among the most vulnerable people in any disaster. So, first and foremost, when a disaster strikes, we are paying attention to what do children need. And usually, like anybody else, they're going to need things like food, water, shelter, protection, care, things like that. So, we have a special eye out for them in disaster just to make sure that their particular needs are addressed. There are also specific needs that children have, things like education, safe places, as I talked about, the child-friendly spaces, safe places where they can go and play. Sometimes children actually get separated from their families in the midst of disasters, and we can help them reunite with their families or with their, find other caregivers to protect them, because children obviously in these kind of contexts need protection. They need special attention so that their needs are not missed, because they don't always have the voice to articulate their needs that others do. Where we can, we do help them give that voice. Particularly in places where children are targeted in things like war, where maybe there's recruitment of child soldiers or there's just abuse of children, we will try to empower those children as well to both to articulate their needs, their concerns, and then find ways for them to protect themselves as well. I think it's really important to pay attention to what's going on in the world, to pay particular attention to situations where there are disasters. Some of these disasters are ones that you may have heard about once in a while. They may not be in the news. Maybe they've been going on for so long that you stop paying attention to them. Somalia is an example where a lot of people just don't pay attention to what's going on. It's really important to think in most of these cases that the victims of these disasters, whether it's war or natural disaster, are often they're usually the poorest. They're often women, they're often children, disabled, elderly, people who may or may not have much of a voice in their society. They may not have a lot of economic power, and they're often the ones who suffer. So disasters tend to hurt the most vulnerable the most, and they're often, in a sense, not very responsible for the damage that's been caused by that disaster. They're victims of it, and so we need to not blame the victim in disasters. We need to see how we can support them, and I think there usually are two really important ways. One, where you can provide money to charities that you trust, you think are going to do a good job in helping those people. It is really important that we have the resources, whether they're big or small, to make a difference where we can. Two, it's important to get involved in advocacy efforts. That there are times when our government isn't doing enough, when the general public isn't doing enough, they're not paying attention, and I would really encourage to get involved in some of these issues and articulate the concerns of the people who are suffering the most in these disasters. Advocate for our governments to do more, advocate for the public to do more, and in that you can make a real difference.